When night falls and the waves begin to whisper beyond the shore, something deep within your mind begins to stir. There, in that liminal space between waking and dreaming, lies what Carl Jung called the sea of the unconscious, where forgotten memories, silent fears, and hidden dreams wait patiently to be heard. Tonight, Sleep Easy with gentle waves and a soothing story is more than just a passage into sleep. It is an inner voyage, where each gentle wave doesn't merely soothe the body but cleanses the soul. The story of the sailboat and the girl named Elara will carry you across a tranquil ocean, where reality melts into reverie, and you may find fragments of yourself in every breath of the sea. Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." So tonight, allow these tender waves to guide you away from the shores of worry and into the vast ocean of your soul, where true peace begins. Part 1. The invitation to sleep night descends softly like a silk ribbon, gliding over the waves that break against the distant hull of a ship. Across the deep violet sky, the stars begin to glow, as if someone were carefully stitching the fabric of darkness back together. Within this quiet space, a low, warm voice emerges. Ethan Gray's, unhurried, unforced, and as gentle as the wind. "Welcome to Drifting Sleep Stories," he says, his tone even and deep, like a lullaby for the weary soul. "Let me take you on a journey, not across the land, but across the water. Not merely to sleep, but to remember something that has always belonged to you. Outside, the world still hums faintly with the echoes of the day, but here, everything begins to slow." Ethan explains that tonight marks the beginning of a 3-part story, a sailboat voyage through the Aegean Sea, where the winds of ancient Greece once whispered prophecies to humankind, and where the waves carried both myths and dreams. He pauses for a moment, then continues softly, almost like a guided meditation. Lie down. Feel your body resting against the bed, your breath slowing, your shoulders releasing. Outside, there may still be sounds of life, but here, there's only your breathing and the waves drawing near. A brief silence follows, just long enough for the listener to feel their own heartbeat. "Do not try to sleep," Ethan continues, "for sleep is not something to be conquered. It is the place you return to, like a boat coming back to harbor after a long day adrift. Let your mind be the ocean, and let every worry drift away like fallen leaves upon the water." Music rises, faint harp notes blending with the wind. Ethan tells us that tonight's protagonist is Elara, a young woman carrying a quiet kind of exhaustion, not of the body, but of a soul that has been running too long through the noise of the world. She has just left Istanbul on a night bus, carrying a small suitcase and a simple wish: to rest, to listen, and to be herself again. On the coastal land of ancient Thea, what people now call Turkey, Elara will board a small wooden boat with 11 other passengers to begin a 3-day journey across deep blue waters. But what she does not yet know is that this boat will take her not only to islands hidden beneath Mediterranean light, but into the depths of her own soul, where each wave represents the unconscious, and every gust of wind is a call from the self. Ethan's voice softens, almost like a whisper brushing against the ear. Perhaps in this story, you will see yourself too. Someone who has been searching too long for something out there, forgetting that peace has always lived in here, he says, gently tapping his chest. Carl Jung once wrote, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes." Outside the window, the wind seems to agree, sighing softly through the narrow gaps. Ethan pauses again, then says, "Take a deep breath and let your heartbeat merge with the rhythm of the sea." There's no need to rush anywhere. Every great journey begins with a single moment of stillness. And then his voice drifts into the background music, merging with the sound of waves and the breathing of the night. The listener can almost feel themselves standing at a moonlit harbor, watching a small sailboat sway gently in the tide. A quiet invisible hand seems to beckon. Step aboard and let the voyage begin. Ethan speaks one last time, softly like a dream fading into dawn. Tonight you don't have to do anything, just drift. Just listen. Just let the ocean do the rest. The music settles. The waves fall into rhythm, and in that moment, the line between listener and story, between dream and reality, between you and Elara, disappears. All that remains is a serene stillness, as if the universe itself were holding its breath, waiting for the journey to begin. Part 2. The encounter with the protagonist, the early sky over the coastal town of T, slowly faded from violet to pale blue. The newborn sun poured its golden light over the white hillside houses, coating them in a warmth as soft as honey. In the distance, a night bus from Istanbul rumbled into the small seaside town, leaving behind a faint trail of dust in the still air of dawn. The door opened, and Elara stepped down. Her hair was slightly tousled from the long journey, and her eyes still carried traces of fatigue. She drew in a deep breath. The salt of the sea filled her lungs, mingled with the scent of freshly roasted coffee and the sound of wooden cartwheels rolling slowly over cobblestone streets. Everything here seemed to move at a rhythm far gentler than the world she had just left behind. Elara stood there for a long while, letting herself listen to the morning, the chirping of birds, the hush of waves in the distance, and the steady rhythm of her own heartbeat calming once more. She wasn't in a hurry. After months of being pulled into endless cycles of work and hollow conversations, she no longer knew who she was beyond the roles life had forced her to play. The only things she carried in her small suitcase were a notebook, an old scarf, and the quiet wish to find peace. Something simple, yet long lost. Before her stretched the sunlit path leading toward the harbor. Small cafes were just opening. A shopkeeper wiped down wooden tables while the scent of warm bread drifted through the air. Elara smiled softly, not for any particular reason, but because in that instant time itself seemed to pause. Ethan Gray, the narrator of Drifting Sleep Stories, spoke in his calm, velvety voice. Sometimes, the journey back to yourself doesn't begin with a grand calling, but with a single breath, and one small step away from where you've been. Elara began to walk. The sound of her suitcase wheels over the cobblestone was like the rhythm of an overture. The morning light brushed across her face, revealing both fragility and quiet determination. She did not know exactly where she was going, yet something deep within her was guiding the way, as though the sea itself were calling her name. As she turned a corner, the harbor came into view. Rows of white-painted wooden boats anchored along the shore, their sails furled, their reflections shimmering on the mirror-like surface of the water. Gentle ripples danced with the sunlight, and seagulls glided above, their cries weaving into the melody of the waves. She stopped at the edge of the wooden pier and looked down into the turquoise water. The reflection staring back at her was no longer the weary face she knew. It was clearer, softer, as if another version of herself were waiting to be recognized. A breeze passed through, lifting her hair, and for a moment, Elara felt she was standing between two worlds, the world of yesterday and the one about to unfold. Ethan's voice returned, distant yet intimate. Carl Jung once wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." Those words echoed like a message she had long waited to hear. Elara didn't need to know where this voyage would lead her. She only knew that if she didn't step aboard that boat, she would remain forever trapped in the restless tides of her own mind. And so, she continued walking. The path to the harbor shimmered in sunlight. In the whispering wind, it felt as though someone, or something, was calling to her. Not in words, but in the silent language that only the soul can understand. Elara tightened her grip on the handle of her suitcase and smiled. She was no longer the woman of sleepless nights and hurried mornings. In that step, she felt a change, small but real. A new chapter was about to begin, a journey not only across the sea, but into the deepest layers of her own soul. Part 3. The port town and the rhythm of stillness. Morning in the port town of T looked like an old painting softly relit with gold. Sunlight slanted across red-tiled roofs, spilling over cobblestone streets, and glimmering upon the turquoise sea beyond. Elara walked slowly, her hand resting lightly on the handle of her suitcase, eyes wide open, as if trying to capture every fragment of this unfamiliar place into her heart. She followed the waterfront path where small cafes were just opening. The scent of roasted coffee mingled with the aroma of freshly baked bread and sea salt, creating a fragrance that could not be named. A cafe owner wiped down wooden tables. A few locals sat quietly, reading their newspapers, the soft clink of spoons against porcelain echoing through the morning. Delicate, steady, like the heartbeat of the town itself. No one here seemed to be in a hurry. They spoke in short, gentle phrases. Their eyes were kind, their movements unhurried. Couples strolled hand in hand along the harbor. Old fishermen mended nets on wicker chairs. Children ran about laughing like small waves cresting on the shore. Time here flowed differently, as though an invisible hand had loosened the clock's rhythm, allowing everyone to live slowly, breathe deeply, and listen inwardly once again. Elara stopped beside a wrought iron railing and looked down at the rippling sunlight on the water. The sea shimmered like thousands of tiny mirrors dancing in motion. Among the neat rows of wooden boats, a few white sails swayed gently, creaking softly in the breeze. She closed her eyes, inhaling the briny wind, and for the first time in a long while, her heart felt at peace. She didn't know if it was the sunlight, the scent of coffee, or the sound of the waves. But in that moment, Elara realized she was truly living. There were no deadlines, no meetings, no unread messages or urgent emails. Here there was only breath, light, and the full presence of each passing second. Then came the calm voice of Ethan Gray, the narrator of drifting sleep stories, like a tender breeze moving through the mind. When one lives too long in the noise of the world, they forget their own rhythm. Peace never leaves us. It only hides when we are too busy to listen. Elara opened her eyes. The town was indeed moving to a different pulse. A flower seller carefully arranged lavender into a wicker basket. A newspaper boy leaned against a whitewashed wall, dozing in the sun. Together they seemed to compose a quiet symphony, where every small detail had its place. She smiled, and in that moment, all her exhaustion melted away like mist under the morning light. The weariness of those months spent trying to prove herself, to strive to be someone, now felt weightless. She no longer felt separate from the world. She was within it, with the light, the waves, and the salt in the wind. High above, a seagull circled and cried into the stillness. Elara looked up, her eyes glowing with a rare sense of wonder, an emotion she thought she had lost during the long years of fatigue. Carl Jung once said, Ethan continued, the soul needs time for solitude and self-reflection. Without it, she loses herself in the noise of the world. Elara listened to those words as though they were whispered directly to her. Perhaps she had found the true reason for her journey, not to go somewhere but to pause, not to escape but to return. She walked on, passing open windows where white curtains fluttered like waves. Sunlight danced on the walls, and for a fleeting instant she felt each step she took was a breath of the sea itself. From afar, the bells of a small church rang, 3 slow, crystalline tones. The townspeople carried on with their rhythm, unhurried and undisturbed, as though time itself no longer had any hold over them. Elara whispered softly, if heaven exists, perhaps it looks like this, a place where everything moves slowly, simply, yet is full of life. She stopped at a small cafe and ordered a cup of coffee. When the owner placed it before her, the warmth spread through her hands, her chest, and into the air around her. Outside, the waves continued their steady rhythm, neither fast nor slow, like the heartbeat of the town itself. And when she lifted her gaze to the shimmering light on the water, she knew. The journey had already begun, from the very moment she stopped to listen to the world breathe. Elara closed her eyes and smiled. In that tender silence, it felt as though she had just rediscovered the true rhythm of her soul. Part 4. The Captain of the Sea. Elara walked along the wooden pier that stretched toward the harbor, where small boats rested side by side as if asleep. The water shimmered beneath the sunlight, scattering countless ribbons of light that danced across the hulls. A carved wooden sign caught her eye. Aegean Soul Sailing Charter. Beneath the white sail stood a tall man, skin bronzed by the sun, silver glinting in his hair, tying a thick rope with calm precision. He was Captain Nadir. He wore no uniform, no sailor's cap like those from travel postcards. Instead, he was dressed simply in a sand-colored linen shirt, barefoot, his movements composed and unhurried, as if he had known the rhythm of the sea since birth. When Elara approached, he lifted his head and smiled, the gentle smile of someone who had weathered many storms, yet carried serenity in his eyes. "Welcome aboard the Aegean Soul," he said, his voice deep and warm. "Before you step on, please leave your shoes in that box. We sail barefoot, to feel the ship as a part of ourselves." Elara blinked in mild surprise, then bent down to unlace her shoes. The wooden deck beneath her feet was smooth and sun-warmed. As she stepped onto it, a strange sensation flowed through her body, as though she had crossed into another world. Behind her, the sounds of the harbor began to fade. The chatter of people, the hum of engines, the slap of waves against other boats. All that remained were the sighs of wind through the sails, the tap of rope against wood, and the breathing of the sea itself. Elara closed her eyes and let the salty air brush her skin. "Can you feel it?" Nadir asked softly, his voice blending with the wind. "The warmth of the wood, the taste of salt, that's how the sea greets its first-time visitors." Elara smiled. "I never thought a boat could have a soul." Nadir nodded, his gaze drifting toward the horizon. "The sea gives every vessel a soul of its own, just like people. Each of us is a journey. The ship only carries us, but it is our spirit that knows where it's meant to go." His words left her silent for a long moment. Something within her stirred, a quiet resonance, as if an invisible string inside had been touched. She had come here to rest, to escape the noise of life. Yet, listening to the captain, she realized this might be more than a voyage across water. It might be the beginning of a deeper journey, the journey of her own soul. Ethan Gray's voice, calm and steady, the voice of drifting sleep stories, rose like a gentle tide. Carl Jung once wrote in the Red Book, "The soul knows no sea too deep, nor sky too vast. It sails where the wind of destiny carries it." Elara opened her eyes and looked around the deck. The oak tables gleamed from fresh polish. Ropes were neatly coiled. A few linen cushions rested on the benches. Sunlight streamed through the sails, reflecting off the water in shimmering patterns along the hull. Everything was simple, unadorned, yet it radiated a quiet completeness. Captain Nadir checked the anchor line and turned to her. "This boat has crossed many seas, some calm, some fierce. Yet no matter the storm, this deck always keeps the warmth of the sun. People are the same. If you keep warmth in your heart, no wave can ever drown you." Elara looked at him for a long time. In his eyes, she saw the very peace she had been seeking. Not the silence of avoidance, but the stillness of someone who had made peace with himself. She began to pace slowly around the deck, each step like brushing against an ancient memory of the ocean. Beneath her feet, the wood was warm, soft, and steadfast. Above her, the sky widened, spilling light everywhere. Her body felt lighter, her mind opening and slowly shedding the shell the world had wrapped around her. Ethan whispered, "There is a moment when silence becomes sacred, the instant we truly begin to listen." Elara paused and rested her hand on the railing. Below, the water lapped gently against the hull. She no longer heard noise, no longer felt the rush of time. There was only one rhythm left, the breath of the sea and the beat of her heart, merging as one. She looked toward Captain Nadir, who was securing a rope, his presence calm and grounded as stone. In that moment, she realized, some people are born to live with the sea, but others like her come to it to remember how to live again. Nadir looked up, his eyes meeting hers. He smiled, the knowing smile of someone who understood what another had just discovered. Everyone who steps aboard this ship brings a story, he said. And when they leave, they are never the same person again. Elara nodded gently. I think I understand, she said softly. But in truth, she knew she didn't understand yet. She only felt something beginning to move within her. A wave, small but real. The wind stirred, the sails trembled. The scents of warm wood, salt, and sunlight intertwined. Elara felt as if she had just passed through an unseen doorway, from the world of noise into the world of silence. A world where, as Jung once said, the soul speaks in symbols, through images, sensations, and quiet revelations that words could never contain. And this boat, and the barefoot captain who guided it, was the first of those symbols. A calling from the unconscious, the invitation to a voyage whose destination was yet unknown. Elara placed her hand on the sun-warmed railing and smiled, softly, inwardly. For the first time in months, she wasn't afraid of what lay ahead, because perhaps, in the very act of not knowing, life truly begins. Part 5. The Discovery of the Ship. Elara walked slowly along the deck, letting her bare feet feel the warmth of the sun-soaked wood beneath her. The Aegean soul was not a large vessel, yet it possessed a quiet beauty. Simple, time-worn, and alive, as though every rope and crack in its timber held a memory of its own. She passed a long oak table near the stern. A few chairs, faded with traces of sea salt, framed the space, their wooden edges darkened by years of sun and wind. Elara brushed her fingertips across the surface. It was coarse but warm, like the hand of someone who had weathered many storms, yet never lost the warmth in their heart. Around her, sunlight reflected off the sea, breaking into shimmering patterns that danced along the hull and the wooden ceiling. The sound of small waves lapping against the boat blended with the soft whisper of the wind, forming a natural rhythm, a gentle symphony older than human memory, needing no translation, only stillness to be understood. She followed the narrow path running along the side of the ship. Wooden railings, smoothed by countless hands, lined the edges. Beneath her steps, the planks creaked softly, as if the ship itself was murmuring to the one who walked upon it. At the bow, the light grew dazzling, and Elara squinted as the whole world seemed to glow. The sea, the sky, and the vessel itself merging into one luminous breath. The scent of warm wood, sea salt, and a faint trace of oil from the old engine intertwined into something wholly unique. It wasn't pleasant in the luxurious sense. It was the raw fragrance of life itself, earthy, honest, and deeply human. She paused, leaning on the railing, gazing into the deep blue water below. The wind brushed through her hair, and she felt every nerve in her body slowly unwind. All the noise of the past months, meetings, deadlines, small talk that meant nothing, was being carried away by the breeze. Then came the familiar voice of Ethan Gray, the calm, resonant narrator of drifting sleep stories, like the voice of the unconscious itself. Carl Jung once wrote, "Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes." Elara closed her eyes. Yes, she had spent her whole life looking outward, chasing, proving, trying to become someone in the eyes of others. But here, surrounded by sunlight and waves, she felt herself beginning to learn how to look inward again. She walked on, entering the middle of the ship, where a small cabin stood with a round window. Inside, beams of light slipped through the wooden slats, drawing thin lines across the floor. Low shelves held a few books, maps, and glass cups glinting in the sun. Nothing was excessive, yet everything seemed to belong, as if the ship itself had a soul, and everything within it was quietly breathing together. Elara reached out and touched a map hanging on the wall. Its curved lines, islands, and ancient names stirred something within her. She thought of the countless souls who once set sail, carrying a faith that something greater awaited them beyond the horizon. Perhaps, she thought, every human being carries an ocean within, vast, mysterious, waiting to be explored. Ethan's voice continued. Jung said, "The sea is a favorite symbol for the unconscious. It represents the mother of all that lives." Elara smiled. She understood. The sea is the unconscious, boundless, deep, and filled with secrets. And the ship is the human mind, carrying our soul through waves of emotion, fear, and longing. When we finally let go, allowing the ship to drift, it is then, in surrender, that we rediscover who we truly are. She returned to the deck. The sun had risen higher, scattering golden ripples like ribbons of silk around the hull. Elara sat down, touched the wooden table again, and listened to the wind singing through the sails. A feeling of calm spread through her, light, liberating, as if she had just shed an invisible skin. The skin of pretense, fatigue, and ego. Nothing around her had changed. Not the sea, not the sun, only her. And yet, in that stillness, she knew that something within her had begun to heal. The soul, Ethan whispered, does not grow in noise, but in stillness. Elara looked around the deck once more. Sunlight poured through the folded sails, fell across the table, and glowed softly against her skin. Every detail shimmered with simple perfection. She felt the rhythm of the waves, heard the faint hum of the anchor line, and realized she was drifting, not over the sea, but within the quiet depths of her own being. She whispered softly, not knowing whether it was to the sea, to the ship, or to herself, "Thank you for teaching me how to stop." And in that moment, Elara was no longer a stranger on the deck. She had become part of the Aegean soul, and somehow the ship had become a part of her. Part 6. The Sign of Blessing. Noon sunlight scattered over the sea, glimmering like 1,000 shards of broken mirrors. The Aegean soul swayed gently with the rhythm of the waves, its wooden frame creaking softly, the sound of a living breath. Elara walked toward the bow, where the wind blew stronger, salty and alive. She wanted to see the open ocean, that boundless space no human hand could ever truly reach. She placed her hands on the wooden railing, her eyes tracing the far horizon. The small waves lapped steadily against the hull, composing a wordless melody, calm, eternal. There were no traces of cities here, no voices, no engines. Only the ancient silence of the sea, what Jung once called the language of the unconscious. Elara relaxed her body and closed her eyes. She felt the wind thread through her hair, the pulse of the waves beneath her feet. A strange feeling rose within her, small before the vastness, yet embraced by it at the same time. When she opened her eyes, something in the water caught her breath. Beneath the turquoise surface, 2 large round shadows moved slowly. She leaned closer, her heart skipping a beat. 2 enormous sea turtles were gliding side by side, only a few meters from the boat. They circled each other, dancing in the music of the light. Each time the sun pierced through the water, their shells shimmered in golden hues, 2 living jewels moving in rhythm with the sea. They surfaced to breathe, then sank again in graceful silence. A rhythm so natural, so harmonious, it felt like an ancient ritual the ocean still remembered. Elara stood still, forgetting to breathe. Time stopped. In that moment, there was no separation between her and the sea, between human and nature. She felt one great pulse, the eternal heartbeat of existence itself. Then came Ethan Gray's warm voice, from drifting sleep stories carried gently by the wind. In the language of symbols, animals often represent the instincts we have forgotten. The sea turtle, in particular, speaks of endurance, wisdom, and the slow rhythm of the soul. In the symbolic language of the psyche, animals are mirrors of our forgotten instincts, and the sea turtle, a creature of two worlds, belonging both to the deep and to the air, embodies balance between consciousness and the unconscious. It does not rush, it does not compete, it drifts serenely, carrying within it the ancient wisdom of nature itself. Ethan continued. Carl Jung once wrote, "Symbols are the language of the unconscious. They reveal things we did not know we knew." Elara smiled faintly. She felt something beyond words. Those turtles were not just a beautiful coincidence. They were a greeting from the ocean, a message from the unconscious speaking directly to her. In Jungian psychology, when a symbol manifests in reality, it is no longer mere coincidence. It is synchronicity, the meaningful intersection between the outer world and the inner one. And she knew this moment was a sign of blessing, not superstition, but something deeper, the instant when soul and universe move in the same rhythm, when we stop running and the world begins to answer. Elara stood there for a long time, watching the turtles glide away. They cut through the waves, light dancing across their shells, before vanishing into the deep blue. But within her, something had awakened. A quiet belief that every journey is guided by a sign, if only we learn to listen. "Nothing happens by chance," Ethan whispered. Jung believed that when something outside touches something inside, it is the soul reminding us that we are connected to the whole. Elara released her grip on the railing and drew a deep breath. The cool ocean air filled her lungs, rich with salt and freedom. She gazed out where the sea met the sky, the horizon dissolving into light. Inside her, something softened. An old, unspoken fear she hadn't known she was still carrying. She whispered to herself, "If the sea has sent me a sign, then I'll follow this journey to the end." And as she spoke those words, a gust of wind swept across the deck, the sails trembling softly. Sunlight flashed brighter, as if the sea were smiling. Elara lifted her face toward the sky, her eyes shining with pure trust. For the first time in years, she didn't need a plan, a direction, or a goal. She only needed to feel, like the turtles, to let the current carry her, to let the sun warm her back, to let the waves and wind teach her what it means to belong. Ethan's final words drifted through the air, deep and serene. When the soul meets a symbol, transformation begins. And as the Aegean soul cut steadily through the waves, gliding farther into the bay, Elara remained at the bow, silent and still. She knew now her true journey had begun, not among islands, but within the vast ocean of her own soul. Part 7. The Departure. The sun had climbed high, spilling its golden light across the water, making every ripple shimmer as if the sea were paved with silver. Elara stepped out of the cabin, carrying a small backpack and the restless breath of noon. Beneath her feet, she felt the engine hum softly. The Aegean soul was leaving the harbor. A gentle breeze swept through, lifting her hair. The anchor chain rattled, then loosened. The waves lapped tenderly against the hull. All the sounds blended into the overture of a journey. A song without a composer, yet one that made her heart tremble. On deck, a few passengers were already gathered. A young British couple smiled quietly, hands intertwined. Two Turkish brothers, sun-kissed, mischievous-eyed, helped Captain Nader pull the ropes of the sail. And a South African woman sat by the railing, her long curls glinting like strands of gold beneath the sunlight. Strangers all, yet within this floating space, they seemed bound by something unseen. Then came the familiar soothing voice of Ethan Gray, the narrator of Drifting Sleep Stories. As in every journey, the people we meet are not accidents. They are mirrors, reflecting fragments of our own soul. Elara looked around. She didn't know why these people had chosen the same voyage. Perhaps they too were running, from work, from loneliness, or from themselves. Yet in their eyes, she saw the same quiet longing, the wish to breathe, to escape the noise, to remember how to simply be. She smiled at them. The smiles she received in return were soft, reserved, but genuine. No one spoke much. They didn't need to. Sometimes silence is its own language, deeper than words. The boat began to cut through the waves. The harbor receded, the little white houses fading into the hazy light. Elara stood by the rail, watching the water unfold before her. Vast, endless blue. She felt the rhythm of the sea under her feet, and her heart began to expand. Captain Nadir approached, his calm smile steady as the tide. "Everything all right, Miss Elara?" She nodded. "Better than I expected." "The sea has its own way of healing," he said softly. "You only need to let it speak." His words felt ancient, like something carried through time. Elara turned toward the sea. The reflection of the sun blurred her vision, yet she could sense something opening inside her. A door she hadn't known was closed. Ethan's voice returned, gentle as wind. Carl Jung once wrote, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." Elara thought of the people on this boat. Strangers, whose names and stories she didn't yet know. But perhaps, over the next 3 days, each of them would become a mirror, reflecting something she had forgotten within herself. The boat trembled softly as the engine slowed, and the sails caught the wind. The canvas fluttered like breathing lungs. Waves curled and fell against the hull, leaving behind a silver wake stretching to the horizon. Elara felt light, like a sail filled with air, firm yet free. She sat down on a wooden bench, watching sunlight dance across the oak table. A seagull circled above, crying out once before gliding away. In that cry, she thought she heard a calling from her own unconscious, the same calling Jung wrote about in The Red Book. Whoever looks into the sea looks into the mirror of their own soul. The boat drifted farther from shore. The sky opened wide and boundless. Beneath her, the water deepened from turquoise to sapphire. Elara drew in a long, full breath, letting the salty air flood her lungs. She thought of her life, the years that had passed, the relationships that had faded, the beliefs that had worn thin. All of it felt as if it were being washed clean by the wind and waves. There was no longer a destination, no longer a must. There was only the freedom to live, to breathe, to be. Ethan's voice whispered once more. Every voyage outward is also a voyage inward. When the waves move, the soul remembers its rhythm. Elara looked around at the others. Each person was lost in thought, yet among them stretched an invisible thread, the shared journey of souls learning to return to themselves. The wind grew stronger. The sails filled and the boat surged forward. Elara squinted toward the horizon, where sea and sky met in a line as soft as a dream. She didn't know where this voyage would lead, but for the first time that didn't matter. She only knew one thing. She had departed. Not just the boat, but her soul had set sail. Ethan's voice came one last time, steady as the tide. And so begins the true journey, not across the sea, but across the self. Elara leaned against the railing, letting the wind embrace her, letting the waves sing to her. Ahead, the horizon still stretched far and uncertain. But within her, a new dawn had begun. Part 8. The Rhythm of the Sea. The sea stretched out like an endless silk tapestry of blue. Sunlight danced across its surface, scattering into 1,000 flickers of gold, until the whole horizon seemed to melt in pale light. The Aegean soul glided forward slowly, leaving behind soft white ripples, the gentle breath of some great sleeping being. Elara leaned back against the wooden railing, her bare feet dangling, eyes half closed. The sea breeze slipped through her hair, salty and cool, carrying with it the scent of sun, salt, and freedom. Each breath felt longer, slower. Her heartbeat began to fall into rhythm with the steady sway of the boat. No one spoke on deck. There were only the elemental sounds, the hum of the motor, the soft flutter of the sailcloth, and the waves kissing the hull like an ancient lullaby of the ocean. Elara opened her eyes. Everyone was quiet. One reading a book, another watching the waves, another with eyes closed in meditation. Yet the silence was not heavy. It was serene, as if they were all sharing the same rare kind of peace that language could never touch. Then came Ethan Gray's familiar calm voice from a drifting, sleep stories woven through the soft music beneath. Sometimes peace is not a place you arrive at, but a moment when the mind stops resisting. Elara smiled faintly. It was true. She had once thought peace was a destination, a stable job, a home, someone to love. But here, in the middle of the ocean, peace felt disarmingly simple. A steady breath, the wind brushing her skin, sunlight warming her eyelids. Nothing to grasp, nothing to prove, only to be. The boat drifted on. Each wave that touched the hull felt like the beat of a heart, slowing everything down. Elara's body moved with it. The tension in her shoulders melted away. The noise in her head, the plans, regrets, and worries faded like foam dissolving into the tide. Ethan whispered, "Carl Jung once wrote, 'Solitude is for me a fount of healing which makes my life worth living.'" She looked out at the sea. The water shifted from jade to deep blue, fading to violet near the horizon. The sky was so vast it made her feel small, not in fear, but in clarity, reminded of her true place in the great design of things. Elara tilted her face upward, letting the sunlight bathe her. Each ray felt like a lullaby. She exhaled softly, realizing that the emptiness in her chest, that quiet ache of fear, was gone. What remained was a stillness so right, it felt as if the world had clicked gently into place. She remembered the sleepless nights in the city, the horns, the hum of streetlights, her heartbeat stumbling in time with anxiety. Back then, she believed silence existed only in dreams, but now she saw. Silence is not the absence of noise, but the moment the soul stops fighting. Ethan continued, "When you stop trying to hold the waves still, you begin to float." The words made her laugh softly. She thought of how many times she had tried to control everything. Life, emotions, even the uncontrollable. The tighter she held, the more everything slipped away, like seawater through open fingers. But now, surrounded by waves and wind, she understood. Perhaps happiness is not in mastery, but in surrender. The breeze picked up, the sails billowed, and the boat tilted slightly. Sunlight rippled across the wooden deck, glowing in moving gold. A glass on the table trembled, ringing a clear note. Everything moved, yet everything was in harmony. Elara opened her small notebook and wrote a single line. "Here, at sea, there's nothing to do, and perhaps that is why I feel alive." She put the pen down, glancing at her fingers, dusted with dry salt. The sky was pure and vast, clouds as thin as smoke. Something within her was being reborn. A quiet, unspoken life, as gentle and real as the pulse of the waves. Ethan's voice floated through the stillness. The sea teaches us what the psyche already knows. The calmness is not the absence of movement, but the harmony within it. Elara closed her eyes, letting the sea and wind speak to her. No words, no goals. Everything was clear without needing to be understood. She felt she wasn't just sailing across the sea. She was sailing through her own mind, where every wave was an emotion, and every breath was a rhythm of healing. The boat kept gliding forward. Far ahead, the horizon shimmered like a ribbon of dark blue silk. Elara stayed seated, doing nothing, thinking nothing, only listening. And in that still moment, she realized peace was never something to find. It had always been there, waiting for her to stop running. Ethan's voice came softly like the final note of a hymn. And so, in the rhythm of the waves, she found the rhythm of her soul. Elara lifted her head. The sea was still singing. The boat kept moving. And in that glimmering light, she knew she was alive, truly alive, moving gently within the rhythm of the ocean and the rhythm of her own soul. Part 9. The Current of Ancient Time. Evening slowly descended over the Aegean Sea. The sun sank lower, painting a radiant path across the water. a golden road leading straight to the horizon. Elara sat by the ship's railing, her hands resting on the warm wood as her eyes followed the sunlight dissolving into the waves. The afternoon breeze brushed gently against her face, carrying with it the scent of salt and something far older, a fragrance of a world whose name she could not remember. Then came Ethan Gray's calm, steady voice from drifting sleep stories, drifting through the music like a wave rising from the memory of the ocean. Every sea holds a memory. Beneath its surface lie the echoes of all who came before. Elara tilted her head slightly, listening. Somewhere deep in her heart, she felt the truth of it, that the sea was not merely water, but the ancient memory of the earth itself. Each wave, each grain of salt had once touched countless generations, had witnessed the journeys, the beginnings, and the endings of forgotten civilizations. At the bow, Captain Nadir stood tall, his voice low and resonant as he spoke to the passengers about the lands they were approaching. Beneath those cliffs, he said, the ancients carved their tombs into stone. They believed that when the soul left the body, it would cross the sea to return to the gods. These are the lands of Lycia and Caria, ancient people who lived in harmony with the sea. Elara listened in silence. The image unfolded vividly in her mind. Men and women rowing small boats, carrying offerings, carving their names into rock, gazing toward the horizon, toward the place where the sun sets. A bittersweet feeling swelled in her chest, as if she herself had once lived those lives, had once heard these same waves, had once carved her name upon those very stones. Ethan's voice blended with the whisper of the wind. Carl Jung believed that within each of us flows an ancient river, the collective unconscious, carrying the memories and symbols of all humankind. Elara looked down at the sea. The light shimmered in moving lines across its surface, like the pulsing veins of the world itself. She understood now. Out here between sky and water, she no longer felt like a separate being. She was part of the flow, of the souls that had lived, dreamed, loved, and been lost. The wind shifted. In the distance, dark cliffs rose from the sea, their surfaces carved by centuries of storms into strange, sacred shapes. Nadir pointed toward them. That is where the Lycians buried their dead, he said. Their tombs rest between sea and sky, so that the soul may travel freely between both worlds. Elara gazed at them. The open tombs looked like windows in time, hollow, yet somehow watchful, as if the past itself were looking back at the living with quiet understanding. Ethan's voice came again, low and reverent. The dead live on in our unconscious, Jung wrote, for they are the timeless figures that shape our dreams and our myths. A shiver passed through her. She remembered the strange dreams that had haunted her sleepless nights. Dreams of the sea, of a sunken city, of golden light filtering through deep water. Perhaps those dreams were not merely imagination, but the voice of the collective memory, rising from the depths of her own soul. The boat drifted onward. The sky changed color, blue fading into amber, then violet. Everything was bathed in the mystical light of dusk. The water grew so still that Elara could see her reflection clearly. Yet in that reflection, she saw more than her present face. She saw others. A woman in coarse linen carrying water, a Greek sailor standing at the prow, a mother from another age waving farewell to her child at sea. Ethan's words echoed softly, as if spoken from beyond time. We are not merely individuals. We are living continuations of every story that came before. Elara closed her eyes, letting the images merge and dissolve, blending into one continuous stream. She no longer knew who she was among them. Perhaps she was all of them. A soft gust passed, rippling the water. The boat tilted slightly as if bowing to the vastness of time. Elara drew in a deep breath, tasting the salt on her lips, and whispered, "I can hear them. The ancient souls are singing." No one answered, yet it felt as though the sea had heard her. The The waves responded with a low murmur, the wind carrying a long, hollow tone. Everything around her seemed to breathe in unison. Then Ethan's voice returned one last time, a whisper deep and resonant, like the ocean's own memory. To sail across the sea is to sail across the history of the soul. The past is not gone. It flows beneath us, always waiting to be remembered. Elara opened her eyes. Before her, the sea stretched into infinity, and within her, something had changed. She was no longer merely a traveler. She was one who had been called to listen to the voices of the souls that slept beneath the waves. Part 10. Anchored in the hidden bay. The sun was sinking behind the stony hills. Its evening light fell slant across the water, turning the Aegean into a mirror of molten gold. The Aegean soul glided slowly into a quiet cove, where the sea lay still like a sheet of sleeping silk. Along the shore, olive trees stretched toward the fading sky, and a few white houses nestled between cliffs. There were no tourists, no other boats, only the untouched stillness of a world that seemed to have forgotten time itself. Elara stood by the railing, taking in the view. The evening wind grew gentler, salty and warm, like the sea's breath. Captain Nadir signaled for the crew to drop anchor. A sharp clatter rang out, the heavy chain slipping through calloused hands, then the distant thud of metal meeting stone below. The rope tightened, the sound faded, and then silence. Everything stopped. The engine died, the waves softened, and for a moment, Elara heard it. The sound of the ocean's silence. Then came Ethan Gray's familiar voice, from drifting sleep stories, deep and tranquil, cutting through the hush like a soft wind. Silence is not the absence of sound, but the presence of everything we have ignored. Elara closed her eyes. In that silence, she could hear more than ever before. The tapping of the sail's rope against the mast, the gentle lapping of small waves beneath the hull, the whisper of the breeze through her hair, and the steady rhythm of her own heartbeat. Every small sound became sacred. Captain Nadir stood beside her, one hand on the railing, eyes fixed on the sun melting into the sea. "People fear quiet," he said slowly, "because they fear hearing themselves." Elara turned toward him. "And you don't." Nadir smiled, his eyes glinting with the bronze of sunset. "I used to. But the sea taught me, only when we dare to listen, do the storms inside us begin to calm." Ethan's voice murmured through the low hum of the background music. "We cannot touch peace until we dare to face silence." Elara sat down on the wooden deck, her back resting against the railing, feet dangling over the edge until her toes met the cool surface of the sea. The water was clear as glass, smooth and alive. She looked down and saw her reflection. No longer the blurred face of someone searching, but the calm gaze of someone slowly finding home. She thought of the city she had left, a place where the noise never stopped, the traffic, the chatter, the endless ringing of phones. There, silence was considered emptiness. But here, in this quiet bay, she finally understood. Silence was the space where the soul could breathe. The sun slipped fully beneath the sea. Its last light faded into a faint pink trace on the horizon. The boat swayed gently. Elara listened to the rhythm of the waves, each one like the slow breathing of the universe. Ethan's voice deepened. Carl Jung once wrote, "In each of us there is another whom we do not know. He speaks to us in dreams, in moments of stillness." Elara gazed outward. The sky was darkening now, and stars began to appear. She remembered the nights she had once played music loud enough to drown out the emptiness inside. But tonight she longed to hear the silence itself. No one spoke on deck. Some passengers had gone below. Only she, Nadir, and the sea remained. The wind brushed through her hair. The sound of water tapped against the hull in gentle rhythm. She inhaled deeply, letting the cool, briny air fill her lungs. Everything inside her, fear, memory, questions, began to dissolve. Elara no longer tried to find peace. She simply sat, letting silence hold her, and slowly she realized peace was never a prize for effort, but the natural state of the soul when it stops resisting. Ethan's voice lowered, as if afraid to break the spell. The sea does not seek silence. It is silence. Night fell. Stars glimmered above, their reflections trembling in the dark water. Ancient lights returning from the depths. Elara looked up, then down, realizing that between those two mirrors, heaven and sea, she existed in the sacred space where life and stillness met. Captain Nadir spoke softly, his tone like a blessing. "Sleep, Elara. The sea will keep your dreams." Elara smiled, her eyes closing. The waves kept their steady rhythm, tender as a mother's heartbeat lulling her child to rest. Ethan's final words drifted through the stillness, gentle, distant, and warm as the wind itself. Peace does not arrive with the absence of storms. It comes when you realize the storm was never against you. The Aegean soul floated quietly in the bay, rocking like a dream upon the water. Above, the stars grew brighter. Below, Elara sank into sleep, wrapped in the hush of waves and night. And in that sacred meeting place, between the sea and the darkness, between consciousness and dream, she knew that something within her had at last become whole. Part 11, merging with the ocean. Dawn rose slowly, like a ribbon of gold dissolving across the sea. The first light was so soft that Elara could almost hear it spreading along the rippling surface. The air was fresh, damp with salt, and so still that she could hear the rhythm of her own heart. The Aegean soul remained anchored in the hidden bay, gently swaying to the calm breath of the ocean. Elara opened her eyes after a sleep deeper than any she had ever known. No alarm, no engines, only the sound of water tapping softly against the hull, the lullaby of the world itself. She stretched, feeling the weight lift from her chest. Here, time didn't move. It drifted with the tide. When she stepped onto the deck, the sea was so clear it mirrored the sky. Golden rays danced across the surface, shimmering like strands of silk. No one else was awake. The peace was so absolute that she feared even a single movement might shatter it. She walked slowly to the small metal ladder fixed along the boat's edge. The crystal water below beckoned. Elara paused for a moment, then slipped off her light outer dress, revealing a thin white swimsuit beneath. Sunlight glimmered on her skin, and in that instant she was no longer a woman escaping her old life, but a soul preparing to return to nature. She placed her hands on the railing, inhaled deeply, and stepped down. The water touched her toes. Cool, clear, achingly real. A shiver ran through her, not from fear, but from the rawness of crossing into another world. The rungs were slick with salt. She gripped them lightly for balance. Then, with a slow breath, she let go and slid into the sea. The moment the water closed around her shoulders, all the noise in her mind disappeared. She opened her eyes beneath the surface and saw sunlight breaking apart into thousands of radiant threads. The world slowed, softened, breathed. The water embraced her, neither cold nor warm, only steady, reminding her that she was being held. She rose gently until she floated. The surface cradled her like a mother's arms. The breeze brushed her face, and the droplets on her skin sparkled in the morning light. The sun shimmered through the waves, filling her eyes with golden sparks. Elara smiled, the first true smile in months, when she realized there was nothing left to hold on to and nothing left to fear. Then came Ethan Gray's voice, soft as the wind, drifting across the water from drifting sleep stories. The ocean is not outside of you. You are made of the same salt, the same tides, the same rhythm. Elara released the tension in her limbs, surrendering to the embrace of the sea. She felt every cell of her body dissolve. Into the water, into the wind, into the light. The boundaries between self and world began to fade. She tilted her body, letting the current carry her toward the rising sun. The water slipped smoothly along her skin. Beneath her, tiny fish darted by. their shadows painting fleeting patterns over her body, fragments of memory from another time. Elara closed her eyes, listening to the ocean's ancient lullaby, a song that had never ceased. Ethan's voice murmured again. Carl Jung once wrote, "The sea is the favorite symbol for the unconscious. It is the mother of all that lives." She pondered those words. The ocean, the primal mother, the place where all life began and where all would return. To step into the water was not merely to touch nature, but to touch the deepest layer of oneself, where instinct, emotion, and soul become one. Elara turned over, floating on her back. Above her stretched the flawless blue of the sky. Below her, the vastness of the sea, and she was between them, a living bridge between consciousness and the unconscious. She breathed slowly, in through her nose, out through her mouth. Each breath sent a small ripple outward. The sounds of water, wind, and heartbeat blended into a single rhythm. When you surrendered to the water, Ethan said, you realize it was never trying to drown you. It was trying to hold you. A droplet rolled from her hair to her lips. It tasted of salt, pure, alive, as if the ocean had let her taste the origin of life itself. Elara laughed softly, her laughter scattering into the wind. She spread her arms wide, letting sunlight pour over her, letting the water lift her, letting breath pass freely without resistance. In that moment, she didn't need to become anyone or find herself. She already was, in her most ancient, unguarded form, a soul adrift in the breath of the cosmos. Ethan's final whisper came like a benediction. To float is to trust is to return. Elara opened her eyes, gazing up. The sunlight broke into 1,000 golden shards around her. The ocean continued to sing its wordless, eternal hymn. And she understood the ocean was never only out there. It was within her. Because in that moment, Elara and the sea were no longer two. Part 12, the still moment of awakening. The afternoon sky stretched wide and clear, like a flawless silk of blue. The sea was so calm that Elara could see her reflection in it, not the weary face of the city girl she once was, but the image of a soul newly reborn. She floated on her back, letting her body drift gently with the tide. The water cradled her, soft as a mother's embrace. Above her, the white clouds moved slowly, like the last faint thoughts dissolving from her mind. The sun was setting, tinting the ocean with gold and rose, like a dream fading into silence. Elara took a deep breath. The scent of salt, sunlight, and life itself filled her lungs. She relaxed her limbs and let her breathing merge with the rhythm of the waves. There was no longer a self floating and an ocean holding, only one unified movement, the primordial pulse of existence itself. Then came Ethan Gray's voice from drifting sleep stories deep and distant, echoing like a memory rising from the ocean floor. When she stopped seeking, she began to awaken. Elara closed her eyes. The words soaked into her like light filtering through water. All her life, she'd been searching for peace, for love, for meaning for herself. Yet the more she searched, the further she drifted. Because every search begins from the fear of something missing. And now, floating here in the sea, she finally understood. Nothing had ever been missing. Carl Jung once wrote, "Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes." She remembered those earlier days, waking to foggy mornings, sleepless nights, endlessly reading words of wisdom and self-help, trying to understand life. Now she no longer needed to understand. She only needed to feel. And in that moment, she was no longer Elara. Not the name, not the memories, not the pain. All of it melted away like mist under sunlight. What remained was breath. The breath of the cosmos, dissolving into water, into light, into wind. Ethan's voice continued gentle as twilight. The moment of awakening is not dramatic. It is quiet. It happens when the mind dissolves into being. Elara opened her eyes. Before her, the sky and sea had merged into one endless horizon, without boundary or division. A lone seagull crossed the distance, its wings brushing the air like a brushstroke across the canvas of heaven. She watched it and smiled. A real smile, unprovoked, unreasoned. The future didn't matter. No answers were needed. To be was enough. And in that simple presence, she realized she had come home. From the deck, Captain Nadir called out, "Elara, the sun's setting up. It's time to come back." She turned, waved, and swam slowly toward the boat. Each stroke was a farewell to her old fears. The water held her, lifting her gently, carrying her closer to wholeness. By the time her hand touched the hull, the sun had vanished beyond the horizon. The last light faded, leaving only the deep indigo of dusk. Elara climbed aboard, droplets falling from her hair onto the wooden deck, glimmering in the dying light. She sat down, wrapped a towel around her shoulders, and gazed out at the sea. The waves still moved, but there was no other sound. Not because the world was silent, but because she was. Ethan's voice softened, as if offering a benediction. In this silence, the unconscious begins to speak. Not in words, but in presence. The sea tells her, "You are home." Elara closed her eyes, letting the ocean's voice cradle her. Each wave beat was the heartbeat of the earth. Each breeze, the breath of time. She no longer felt small, for when the soul unites with the universe, there are no travelers, only the eternal returning to itself. She lifted her gaze to the sky. The first stars had begun to appear, their reflections scattering across the water in thousands of shimmering lights. Everything, the sky, the sea, herself, glowed in stillness and fullness. Ethan whispered, his voice like the night wind brushing across the deck. "The sea does not end where the shore begins, nor do you end where your body does. The infinite is within you." Elara smiled. She placed her hand over her heart and felt its rhythm align perfectly with the distant sound of the waves. Aboard the Aegean soul, adrift upon the ocean, she was no longer seeking peace. She was peace itself.